Hey guys, Dr. Stephanie here. I'm a physical therapist, and today I want to go through a routine that will help you stretch and strengthen your hip flexors. Hip flexors are those muscles in the front of your hip, and they often get tight or feel tight because we do a lot of sitting, a lot of forward movement. Even activities like running or walking can cause the feeling of tight hip flexors because we're doing all that forward movement. We're lifting our knee up to our chest like this and doing that in a repetitive motion, and that can make those muscles feel sore or tight. And sometimes just stretching them doesn't help at all. So you can feel like you have tight hip flexors and then stretch and stretch and stretch, and nothing seems to get better. And that's because you probably need to add some strengthening as well. Those muscles don't get used as much as they should when we're sitting a lot, or if you're doing a lot of running, maybe they get overused and they're not strong enough. So it's important to work on mobility and strength at the same time. So all of these exercises we do today will work on strength, we'll work on mobility, and we'll get those hip flexors feeling much better. So we're going to do a whole bunch of different positions, but I'm going to start in a kneeling position. And it's going to be a half kneeling position. This is a great way to stretch your hip flexors. I don't like to do a lot of just static stretching because that doesn't seem to help a whole lot. And in the research, it doesn't really support that helps get rid of any type of pain or tightness. So we're going to do a little bit more of a dynamic stretch where you're moving while you're doing it, kind of getting the blood flowing, getting those muscles moving. So in this half kneeling position, you're just going to lean forward like this, and you're going to feel the stretch in the knee that's kneeling. You're going to feel it in the front of your hip. So you're just going to lean forward, and you want to make sure you don't lean forward. You want to keep your trunk straight up and kind of tuck your hips in, because if you don't, then you'll be stretching other things besides your hip flexors. So kind of keep that back up straight. Just lean forward into your hip. Pause for a second or two, and then come back, and we're going to go into a hamstring stretch on the other leg. You're going to pause for a second or two, and then go back into that hip flexor, and then back into the hamstring. And we're just going to do a few of these today. You can do more. I would say 10 or 15 on each side is probably a good way to go. But I'm just going to show you maybe 5 of each. And just pausing for a second here, pausing for a second here, and then so you switch legs, do it on the other side. So now you can see I'm stretching here, keeping my back up straight, lean forward, come back, stretch that hamstring, forward, come back into that hamstring stretch, forward. You can kneel on something like a thicker pad or a pillow, or try this on a bed if the hard floor hurts your knees. This mat gives some cushion, but not a ton. Okay, so pause for a second, keep the back up straight. You feel a stretch in here, and then come back here into the hamstring. Okay, then we're gonna stay in this kneeling position. We're gonna add a little strengthening. So we're gonna do an isometric lift. So just gonna lift that front foot, hold for a couple seconds, and then back down. If you need to hold on to something, you can. So you're gonna lift, hold for a couple seconds, and you can actually work your way up to holding for 5 or 10 seconds. If you hold on to something, you may be able to hold a little bit longer. So you want to maybe hold up to 10 seconds on that one. And that's just really making that hip flexor work, holding your foot up off the ground. And then same thing on the other leg. And I would recommend doing 10 or 15 of these. So if you can hold for 5 or 10 seconds, and then relax, and then go through that 10 or 15 times. Just really working on that hip flexor. Okay, now we're going to go into a seated position, and I'm going to use a yoga block for this one. You can use a water bottle or any sort of object. This is going to be a hip flexor hurdle. So you're going to just lift up and down to the other side. And if like this height is too high to start with, you can start with a lower height. You're just going to lift up. You don't want to lean too far back when you do it. So if you find yourself leaning, you may need to start with a lower height. You can start with your hands on the ground, but then you want to work up to maybe hands on your legs and then hands out in front of you, because then you're really working that hip flexor and you're not using anything else to help you along. So you're just going to go back and forth and do about 10 or 15 and then switch to the other side. Same thing, 10 or 15. Again, keeping your hands either out in front of you, on your chest, or if you're just starting out and you need to put your hands on the floor, that's okay. Just make sure you're not leaning back too far as you do this. Okay. And then you're going to lie on your back and just bring a knee to your chest. And so this one we're going to hold 5 or 10 seconds. And this just gets a little stretch. It gets a stretch here, kind of in the back of your hip. It also stretches out here because you're forcing this other leg into a flex position. So this leg has to extend, kind of stretching that hip flexor. Same thing on the other side. You don't need to hold this too long, maybe 5 or 10 seconds. And then just switch back and forth. Just like that. And do 10 or 15 on each side. Okay, then from there, we're going to use a band. Place the band around your feet. And I'm going to show you 2 different exercises lying on your back with this band. So you're going to start with our legs straight out, band around your feet. You're just going to bring one knee up towards your chest and then back down. Another knee up, back down. You're just going to alternate. And this one you want to do 2 to 3 sets of 10. Also, a lot of people have questions about popping or clicking in your hips. I know my hips pop sometimes. Popping or clicking is totally common, sometimes normal. If it causes any pain, then you should probably not do that exercise or get it checked out. If there's no pain associated with the popping or clicking or cracking or whatever you feel, then it's okay. Sometimes it's a tendon popping over a bone. Sometimes it's just kind of air bubbles in the joint. They don't know specifically what all is going on with the popping or cracking, and it could be a whole lot of different things. But as long as there's no pain associated with it, then it's not a problem and you can keep doing the exercise. Okay, so just back and forth here, 2 to 3 sets of 10. And then I'm going to make it a little bit more difficult. Keep that band around your feet. Bring your knees up here. And you're just going to extend one leg out and back. Extend the other leg out and back. And just alternate here. This one is a little bit harder. You have to engage your core a little bit more. And you can even pull down a little bit as you get a little bit more advanced. But again, 2 to 3 sets of 10. Okay, now all of those will help improve that hip flexor strength and mobility. And then we're going to do one more. And this is how I like to end. This just kind of stretches out those hip flexors, get you out of that seated position, that kind of forward position. So this is just a Cobra stretch. So basically just push up onto your hands as high as you can. And this is just kind of getting a stretch in the whole front of your body. And you can hold this 10 or 15 seconds. You can hold it a little bit longer if you want to. If this seems like it's too much on your back or you just can't quite get up that high, you can start off on your elbows. This is also a stretch because you're kind of putting yourself in that backwards position instead of that forward lean position. It's great for your neck too because you're kind of getting that neck extension as well. So that's how I just like to finish that. Just get a little extra stretch there. Just kind of relax in that position. Okay, so all of those exercises you can do multiple times a week to really work on those hip flexors. I suggest 5 or 6 times, but if you only have time for maybe 3 times a week, that works as well. And that'll really build that hip flexor strength, that hip flexor mobility, and make you feel a whole lot better.